Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Asiri, and our mission is to support the military community in their civilian career. Today's episode number 346, Wounded in Action, Whiskey, and Entrepreneurship with Clayton Hinchman.
And she goes, why would they? Oh my God. And I said, Jonathan, for the rest of his life, will need a caretaker to help him do the most intimate things we do as people, which is use the restroom. And I said, I'll never feel sorry for myself ever again. I took a shot of Patron, and feeling sorry for yourself has never crossed my mind ever again. And I think about Jonathan almost every day because he impacted my life, and he wouldn't know me from Adam. But perspective is what so many people have lost, so many Americans have lost. And he helped me in a time that he'll never understand. And his strength and courage to go on living, it affected me, and it affects me today. And, that's just how the resilience and where my strength came from, was seeing him overcome and adapt to a new life. So
Here are the top 3 reasons to listen to today's episode. 1, tenacity. Clayton describes his experience stepping on an IED in Iraq and the grueling road to recovery. His thoughts on perspective and perseverance are exceptional. 2, sales. Clayton's attitude towards business is inspiring. His competitive nature and desire to provide for his family are significant leverage in his business exploits. 3, entrepreneurship. Clayton has repeatedly started organizations that thrive, from USI, which was acquired by Ignite, to Black Patch Distilling and his current government contracting company, SPS. Clayton has demonstrated his gift at starting and growing businesses. Beyond the Uniform has over 350 episodes just like this one, and 20 videos with America's top veterans, including Jocko Willink, the former CEO of Pepsi, NFL players, and more. They are all offered for free at beyondtheuniform.org. If you benefit from Beyond the Uniform and would like to help get this in front of more members of the military, please consider donating at beyondtheuniform.org/donate. You can also text support BTU to 33777. Our cost of production is $300 per month. We are an all-volunteer team, and we could use your financial support. That is texting the number support BTU at 33777 or going to beyondtheuniform.org/donate. With that, let's dive into my conversation with Clayton. Well, joining me today in Huntsville, Alabama, my guest is Clayton Hinchman. Clayton, welcome to Beyond the Uniform.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So for listeners, I want to give you a quick bio on Clayton. He is the chairman of the Black Patch Distilling Company, which is a combat veteran-owned and operated distillery. He started out at West Point and served as an infantry officer for nearly 5 years before being medically retired as a captain due to wounds sustained during an improvised explosive attack while conducting a night raid to kill or capture al-Qaeda in Iraq. He is an honor graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School and holds a master's from Georgetown University. After his departure from the military, he served as president and CEO of USI, which was acquired by Ignite in 2016. So, Clayton, maybe to kick things off, anything that's not in your bio you'd like listeners to know?
I'm originally from South Texas, so I guess there's a piece of me that's an independent spirit. I'm a Texan through and through, I guess, no matter where I go. I haven't been back to Texas in 20 some odd years. I mean, I go there intermittently because of friends. But, I guess the only thing I can say about my life and career was that, I've always pretty much asked myself, why not? I've never asked myself why I would do something. I've always said, why the hell not? Let's give it a try. If somebody else can do it, I can do it. And maybe that's a little bit arrogant. I don't know, but it's kind of served me well. And I've had more fun solving problems that I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but just kind of threw myself into it. So I guess that's the only thing I can say about myself that wasn't in the bio.
That's awesome. Well, I think your story, I'd love to start with the experience you had with the IED in Iraq. And I think it's helpful for listeners because For those of you who are still in the military, we never really know when this transition will occur. And it seems like that transition was kind of thrust upon you unexpectedly. And so maybe we could start with whatever you'd like to share about the events leading up to this incident and how that played out for you.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point. Is everybody in the military, has to transition at some point. It's going to happen. And it's kind of like, we're not professional athletes, but a lot of combat, high speed guys and gals really, they look at themselves as athletes. I always did. I tried to keep myself in the highest physical peak performance that I could, because you're doing a really intense mission. But yeah, no, so I volunteered. I was a platoon leader in 10th Mountain Division. I was in Iraq. I was in Kirkuk, I was in Kurdistan up in the north. Kirkuk was the city. My battalion commander, I was able to volunteer for this task force and take over another platoon. I'd been a platoon leader for almost 14 months, and I was able to volunteer and I was a heavy weapons platoon leader, which means I just drove around in trucks and got blown up pretty much. That's all we did. My mission was to have the Kurds and the Arabs get along. That was kind of my job. And that's not what I wanted to do. That's not what, since, I went to West Point 2001 and the towers came down, what I had been thinking about for a long time. So I got to volunteer and go to Special Operations Task Force 17. And it was a 10th Mountain oftentimes gets attached to Army Special Operations units, Delta Rangers, things like that. And it wasn't like Cordon when they were doing the missions. It was, you have a larger footprint. So when they hit a target that's too big for them, because they're all small unit tactics, our squadron would go in and take over a battle space for a certain amount of time. So I volunteered for that. And I knew we were going to get to chase Al-Qaeda. I was very excited to get to do a real Ranger mission. And light infantry, I'm a light guy. I wanted to be on foot. Drop me off and I'll march 100 million miles. It's not a problem. I didn't like trucks. I don't like helicopters. They're like big targets to me. So a lot of my friends loved them, but I never did. I like being light. But anyways, so was conducting a night raid. I guess it was the day before Mother's Day. We're getting prepared. We only ran night operations. We wore black patch. The name of the distillery, the heritage, comes from the unit, because we had to wear sterile uniforms, no name, no rank. And all we wore was a single black patch and an American flag. And I was just conducting a night raid. It had been a long day. We had gotten new body armor, so my guys didn't get all the rest they needed. I remember that specifically. And then, 2 hours into the mission, an hour and a half into it, we were just walking across, I guess, kind of a little trail. And I was following 15 of my guys. It was kind of right next to a gun position that I'd set up, because I thought there was a high-speed avenue of approach. We thought that the enemy may come down those lines. And I was just walking with my radio operator, and I stepped on an IED, and it took my right leg. I stepped on a 122 millimeter mortar round, which has a 5 to 7 meter kill radius, which is why about 10, 12 of my guys were wounded. My radio operator, Sergeant Tran, he lost his eye because the night vision goggle went back and crushed his eye socket. The blast actually fractured one of his femurs because the blast was so bad. And my 55-year-old Iraqi defectee interpreter named Cowboy, I never knew his real name, he had a bunch of shrapnel wounds because they were the ones closest to me. And when I stepped on it, I felt a wave of water. It's the best way I can, a pressure hit me. And I'm a meathead, so I just thought I could muscle through it. And when I stepped, my leg was gone already. And I fell down and I started screaming for a medic to come help me. And then my Sergeant Oliver was one of the team leaders in front of me. They'd actually walked over the IED. Like 15 guys had trampled all over this thing, and 10 or 15 turn around 1:30 in the morning. Something blows up behind him. He turned around and ran to me, put a tourniquet on my right leg and my left leg, because I still have my left leg, but it had some pretty good scars. And they saved my life, and they gave me 2 shots of morphine, kept me awake. And the bird came in, picked me up, and took me off. And the next thing I knew, I was in back. Well, I fist fought the medic for about an hour because I kept thinking to myself, I was in so much pain that if I put a mask on, I would pass out. I don't know why. That's just what I thought. And so I was fist fighting this poor guy in the bird. And finally, when I got to Baghdad, I guess an hour and a half later, or however long it took, it seemed like a long time. They put a mask on me, or I grabbed it, and then I passed out, and I woke up about 12 hours later, and I was able to call my mother and my wife, and depending on who I'm telling the story to, that's the one I called first. I stole a nurse's phone and called them, and the rest is history, I guess.
Man, it's just wild hearing that. I appreciate your candor in telling that story. And I guess the thing I'm most curious about is your recovery. And I know actually our listeners, some people may have gone through something similar. Thankfully, most haven't and aren't experiencing that amount of just an unexpected shift in one's complete life. But I'm curious what advice you have for people who are going through whatever in their life is a relatively big challenge right now, and how you got through something it's honestly difficult for me to even imagine being in that situation.
No, I mean, I was like all people. I won't say all people. I was, the thing that hit me the hardest was, I volunteered for the Special Olympics. I had always been active in my church. I'm Catholic. I was an altar boy till I was 18. And even when I was at West Point, we had volunteered, like I said, Special Olympics and other things. So there was a piece of me that was really hurt because now I was this cripple, right? Like I'm disabled. And, the biggest thing for me was that, I had always, I guess in my heart, known that I was physically able and capable of doing these things. And even though I volunteered, in my soul that I think I was better than people. I never thought that way. But it really hurt me. Like, did I ever actually think that I was better than anybody? Because I'm not, right? None of us are, and we're all equal. And so that really kind of hurt me, but I was able to keep everything in perspective. And I can tell you, I know exactly when it happened, but I had about 35 surgeries on my leg to repair it. And it got infected. And I had a bunch of revisions, and the doctors, they're doing a great job. They're trying not to take more than they have to. And so they would just open me up every other day for almost, 45 days. And they would just hack a little bit away and then clean it up. And, and they were doing their best. They don't want to cut away part of your limb that you're going to use, if they don't have to. So I had about 35 surgeries, give or take. I've had my ears done 5 times, and I still wear hearing aids, and I have prosthetic ear bones now. And I still don't hear real well because of the blast. But, I gave myself 1 year to feel sorry for myself. And I don't know why it was like this arbitrary number, because I went through all the phases of depression and why me. And, I was the honor graduate at Ranger School, and I thought I had finally found what I was good at. And people had said, people said things to me that they meant as a compliment, but really hurt me. Like, my West Point buddies that would be like, man, of anybody that we thought it would happen to, it wasn't you. And you're like, they saying it as a compliment, but you're like, oh hell, like, am I not as good as I thought I was, or what, whatever. Sometimes the enemy's going to get you. There's no rhyme or reason to war. I've learned that there's no rhyme or reason to combat. Stuff happens sometimes, and it just is what it is. And your faith gets you through that. But my wife talked me into going to Vail, Colorado, about 7 months after I lost my leg. And I'm from South Texas. I've never been skiing. I've never been snowboarding. I don't know anything that's going on. And I'm trying to learn how to snowboard, and I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I was, 7 months, I'm still in that window of feeling sorry for myself. Well, I went into Vail, Colorado, and the firemen had a big firehouse social where they made spaghetti. And I think the CEO from Frontier Airlines, like, put Patron bottles on everybody's table, which is always a great. You've got ice and snow and drunk amputees trying to ski, which just sounds like a great idea, right? So the gentleman I was sitting with, he was 21 years old, and his name was Justin, and his fiance was 19, and they were both in San Antonio, but they were from kind of like South Texas, where I'm from. I'm from San Benito, which is the very southern tip. Half of my family's Hispanic. And so we were just talking. I'm like, hey, I'm from there, blah, blah. Well, Justin, and I'm with my wife at the time, and Justin had been burnt from head to toe. Justin's hands had been melted pretty much off, his face, his hair, he was severely, severely burned, and fuel had been dumped on him at some point. And 7 months after my injury, I'm thinking, I'm talking to him, and I get up and I go to the firehouse restroom. And when I go in, it's a firehouse restroom, so it's really small. I turn around, wash my hands. My wife goes in, she comes out and she goes, "Damn, that's really small." So a couple minutes later, Justin and his fiance, they shove themselves into the bathroom together. And I'm so conceited, I'm so selfish, I'm so self-absorbed in my own misery that I think to myself, why would they go in there together? That bathroom's really small. And then it dawned on me why. And I nudged my wife and I said, Jonathan, I'm sorry, not Justin. I said, Jonathan went in with his wife or fiance. And she goes, "Why would they? Oh my God." And I said, Jonathan, for the rest of his life, will need a caretaker to help him do the most intimate things we do as people, which is use the restroom. And I said, I'll never feel sorry for myself ever again. I took a shot of Patron, and feeling sorry for yourself has never crossed my mind ever again. And I think about Jonathan almost every day because he impacted my life, and he wouldn't know me from Adam. But perspective is what so many people have lost, so many Americans have lost. And he helped me in a time that he'll never understand. And his strength and courage to go on living, it affected me, and it affects me today. And, that's just how the resilience and where my strength came from, was seeing him overcome and adapt to a new life. So.
I love that. I love that too. Cause like, as you're, it seems like you have this experience with Jonathan where you see his incredible resilience and strength. And what I love most about that is like, probably whether you realize it or not, on this podcast and in life, like you are that example for others of your resilience and your strength and your courage. And it's like, it's amazing to think of the impact we have on others. And I just love that. I think that's an incredible story.
I appreciate it. No, I mean, like I said, it's hard to tell the story sometimes. I love telling it, but it's it's difficult to tell sometimes because the impact it had on me as a person. So
yeah, no, one thing I'm curious about is many of us and people listening too, like they have friends who have gone through like these extreme circumstances, and you gave examples of things that people said that unintentionally hurt you. And I'm just curious, like what can people do for listeners who have friends who maybe go through a similar experience? Like what can we do to support them without causing them any further pain or suffering?
I think for me and my family never treated me differently. My wife, I was married, and my wife never treated me differently. My family is a pack of bullies. We just make fun of each other. We bring up stuff you did a long time ago just to pick on each other. And it's just our way. Some people can be real sensitive about certain situations. I go to the gym every day. I take my leg off when I use the rowing machine, when I do ankle to the bar, not ankles to the bar. I work out, I do burpees. I don't care. If you're offended by the fact that I'm taking my leg off in a gym, that's your problem, not mine. That's just the approach that I've taken. And I think that my family and my wife helped me get through that. They never treated me differently. And I think, sometimes we're all going to go through a situation where everybody heals differently, right? I'm not saying that I'm the model, but, it is a new normal. And when people feed you a line of crap, pardon my language, that, oh, you're going to be back to normal, that's BS. You're not. If I had a knee, I'm an above knee amputee. If I had a knee, I would still be in the infantry. I would still be in the Army. I could still use my leg, but I don't have a knee. So I don't walk upstairs very well or downstairs very well. I think I've been successful in my professional career, and I have a lot more that I want to do. But when I first got there, people were telling me, "Oh, you'll be back to duty and you'll be doing this." And it broke my heart. I very quickly realized that that's not true. And I didn't want to call them liars, but they were lying to me because they were trying to make me feel better. I don't need you to make me feel better. I need you to tell me the truth so that I can accept what I have, and then I can move forward. I unfortunately know people that are quad amputees, triple, that have lost two legs. I have, West Point buddies that have lost two legs, and they're out there crushing it. They're killing life, and they're doing these amazing things. And they've just accepted what their new normal is. And you have to do that. And you have to surround yourself with people that aren't going to baby you, that aren't going to pamper you, that aren't going to treat you like an entitled baby. And, you mentioned resilience. People ask me to speak about resiliency. And I always tell the same joke, the stupid joke. I go, I don't know how to spell it, but I mean it when I say that, because I was made this way. I don't know. I'm too dumb to quit. I just don't know another way. And when I was going through Walter Reed and I didn't have a job, I was fat, I was unhealthy, I was unhappy, and I needed a reason to get up every day. And, you know, when I run small businesses, I'm able to make people's salaries and pay for their health care. And that motivates me every day, creating jobs. And it's the same as it did when I was responsible for soldiers in combat. But I think surrounding yourself with people that don't treat you like a baby and don't treat you like an entitled bum. I mean, we have so many people right now that just, you know, especially veterans too, you know, oh, because you served, you're entitled to this, whatever. No, if you're disabled, yes, there are things that you should get help with, right? 100%. I'm not saying that. But think about a young 25-year-old kid who potentially was wounded and goes back into the workforce. And if they're missing an arm or a leg or whatever, and they're still killing it in their job, think about what that does to the workforce, but not only the workforce, your community. Your community is going to see that person in the gym, working a job, doing those things, and then you motivate people. And you know, it's not just veterans. I mean, that's people too that are living with disabilities or whatever they're having to deal with in their personal life. They're still out there being productive members of society. And that, you know, that just motivates the hell out of me when I'm around people like that who are like, you know, Clay, I got to deal with this thing. Screw it. Let's do it. You know, whatever it is. And I'll figure it out. Those are the kind of people that I crave to be around more of, because they're just motivating, you know, they just lift up your spirit. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question,
No, I
but
think that's incredible. And I can tend to try to be kind and soft pedal feedback and things like that. And I love this sense of being direct. And I know when people are direct with me and they're not sugarcoating things, I respect it. I appreciate it. Like, I want that. And I can see how easy it would be to give people intentionally or unintentionally BS and like telling them things rather than dealing with the reality of the situation. Is like, man, this freaking sucks and things are forever different
yeah,
and we'll get through that.
yeah. You know, real quick, I remember being at a party for the president or something at USO when I was working in DC, and there was a gentleman who was a retired colonel, and he was still in the military, and he was kind of like in charge of the Army Wounded Warrior program or something. And we were having a cocktail, and I had already been retired and I was working, and I was working a full-time job during the day. I was kind of learning how to walk, and I was going to Georgetown at night. So I'm kind of tired, right? And I'm doing a lot. And uh, he, um, he asked me if I was mentoring some guys at Walter Reed. And I said, well, you know, sir, I don't really have the time. And I said, and it wasn't a cop out. I said, you know, I'm busy doing these things, but when I go, you know, I talk to them about having a drink, going to dinner, going on vacation, going to school, my work. And I talk about all these things. And I said, if they ask me, I'm like, yeah, I'm an above knee amputee. Anyways, let me tell you about this thing I was doing. And it stuck out to me because this gentleman wasn't wounded, and he was a career military guy. So I respected him. And he said, and he dressed me down. He was very upset with me. And he said, you're an officer. You should be mentoring them and talking to them about their problems and this and that. And I said, sir, no offense, do you think that these guys ever forget that they're missing limbs and they don't know what they're dealing with? I said, too many of you people are talking about what's wrong with them and not about the reason for them to get up every day. You know, we're dealing with 22 suicides every day, and suicide is not the thing. Suicide is the result of all the other failures we're doing as a society and a community: drug addiction, alcohol addiction, abuse, homelessness, helplessness, all of that stuff. You know, I've had like 5 West Point classmates that have killed themselves in the past couple of years, and I don't know what it is. They just have no reason to get up. And I'm going, that hurts me every day. That hurts. And I'm going, it's not about the fact that I need to talk about your problems. You know what that is, right? And sometimes you do need to talk to somebody about your problems. So you do need to get that support. But talk about living your life. Talk about what else you can do. And even though I got one leg and I walk goofy, okay, but I can still do this. I can do that. And, you know, I think, you know, we went into a point in our community where we were babying and coddling everybody. And I wasn't raised that way. I mean, I was an infantry officer, and my soldiers were infantrymen. They were grunts. I mean, they were just good, hardworking people. And they're not gonna, they don't want to be pampered. They don't want to be spoiled. They want to be treated like good, hardworking Americans. And that's, for some reason, I think we're doing a better job, but we obviously can do a lot better job. So.
Right, man, I love that. I recently interviewed Micah Fink, who runs an organization called Heroes and Horses.
Yeah.
And the thing I loved, like the thread that for me came through in that interview, is exactly what you're saying. Like the disservice we do to the veteran community and just people in general by depriving them of struggle and discomfort. Like when we coddle them, we take them away from like the medicine they need, which
Yeah.
is challenge, which is to have something to struggle against. I think especially for men, like we need that struggle, we need that challenge. And when we
Yep.
deprive people thinking we're doing them a service, we're actually hindering them. And I
Oh,
love, I just think of when you were telling that story and you were talking about all the things you're doing, I'm like, man, if I were in that situation at Walter Reed and I saw someone who was out there going to grad school and crushing it and doing things and like traveling, that's motivational to me. That gets me excited. I love that approach. And I'm so happy that you confronted that man who told you, that dressed you down on that. Like, because I think that you did exactly what you need to be doing.
he was not very happy, but and my wife told me to watch my mouth, but I said, I'm not in the military anymore. I don't have
Yep.
to watch what I say. I mean,
Yep.
I don't speak for every veteran. I don't speak for every amputee. I just speak for myself and for me and my friends. I just, exactly what you're saying. That struggle is what defines life. If I didn't have a challenge to do every day to accomplish something, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I've been in that boat when I was at Walter Reed and I was completely miserable. They wouldn't let me work. I couldn't do anything. And I'm just kind of sitting there twiddling my thumbs going, well, I'm a turd. I'm just kind of not a productive member of society and I'm doing nothing. So this is terrible. And it was miserable, but no, I couldn't agree with you more, Justin.
Mm. Let's fast forward a little bit. I want to make sure that we talk about the distillery, and I think one of the things that's incredible about your story is like the things that you've done leading up to this. But maybe let's start with if you ran into someone on the streets and they asked you what you do for a living, how do you answer that these days?
So I'm the chairman of Black Patch Distilling Company, and Black Patch, like I mentioned where the name came from earlier, from my military career, but Black Patch was something that me and my dad, who's actually my stepdad, but he raised me from the age of about 8. He's a chemist by trade. I'm from the Houston area. Everybody works in chemicals and petroleum. He bought me my first beer making kit when I was 16 years old. And my brother's 7 years older than me. And so we tried to make beer and I wasn't really that interested, but when I was wounded, I ended up going to different breweries and wineries because the business aspect really struck a chord with me of how you run everything. I'm not a chemist. I don't get super motivated by the distilling process. It's the marketing, the branding, the sales, managing your profit and loss. All of those things really motivated me. And because my dad had the skill to distill, and he's been distilling for probably, I think, 14, 15 years now. And it started with beer, it went to wine, and he could tell you the whole process of how making beer and wine is not efficient when you're stripping the distillate out. So he wanted to take it further. So he started making his own whiskey, and that was really where it came from. And a couple of years ago, I was able to sell my first company. Made a little money, and I told them, this is something I want to do, and you're doing it. But if you do it, you got to leave Houston because there's like 17 micro distilleries. Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville is a great community. I love it here. And I said, this is a place that's going to continue to grow, and this is where we can grow a business, and this is how we're going to do it. And they packed up and moved a couple of years ago, and now live in Huntsville with me. And so that's good and bad. You're closer to your family, but no, I love it. I mean, we make a bourbon, a rye, some tequila products. We can't call them tequila because they're not made in Mexico, but they're 100% Mexican blue agave. And our best seller is a cinnamon whiskey, which is actually, we hand make our own cinnamon candy, which is very time consuming, but it's a lot better. My dad can go into the polymerization of sugars and how when you caramelize the sugars, it forms a polymer chain and it's a smoother flavor and yada, yada, all the chemistry. And then the last one we have is our bourbon that we then blend with the Mexican blue agave, which is sweet. So think of like a honey whiskey. And that's what I do now. I'm also a defense contractor, run a defense contracting firm, but my first passion is making whiskey. So
What's your day-to-day life look like then? Like, how do you balance things between like, is it kind of like 80% on the defense contracting, 20% on the distillery, or how does that look?
I would say right now I'm 100% defense contracting. I that's really what I do. Well, I say 95% because I fill in gaps and do other things, but I made all the marketing, all the branding that goes along with the distillery. And we're really only in our second year of sales. So when we made the business plan, we had very clear lines of authority. I go out and make a lot of connections for Black Patch. I don't do a lot of the events anymore. We have people that do events for us and do tastings and things like that. But the thing is really people want to talk to my dad because he's the distiller. And it's funny because my dad he's super nice and friendly guy, but he's a little bit of an introvert. Like he doesn't purposely put himself out there. And he always thought, oh, people want to meet you because you're the combat veteran. And I'm going, no, people want to talk to you because you're the one making the product. I mean, I funded it and own it, and I run and I help run it. But really they want to talk to him because, I think the funny thing is in my day-to-day job where I'm working with a bunch of nerds that are engineers, I don't have an engineering background per se, but working with my dad, when you get an engineer or my dad, because he's a nerd, to talk about his science, he just opens up and he turns into this whole little butterfly that you just don't get from an old hairy fat man with a beard, but it's just the passion that comes through. It oozes out of him of what he's doing. And, I can't do that. I can't sell the same way he does because I don't understand the chemistry. But that's his passion and people really respond to that. I mean, I got to tell you, it's boring every time somebody tells me how awesome my dad is. And I went and visited him and he talked to me and I'm like, I get it. He's better than me. I heard you the first 100 times, but it really does. People respond to him because, it oozes out of him, the passion that he has for distilling spirits. So.
What advice do you have on two things for a listener who aspires to start a distillery? Any advice there? And then also anyone who's listening that maybe aspires to work with a family member, any advice on how to manage that?
So I'll start with a distillery, just like a winery and a brewery. Add a lot of padding into your initial cost because there's going to be things that you miss that you didn't know about. I was lucky. A lot of people open their door. There's a lot of people like us. There's other distilleries that are in Alabama or Tennessee. They'll come by and ask us. We're open kimono. Hey, this is what we did. There was a gentleman here locally who had started a small craft distillery, not really big, but he gave me some advice on the federal paperwork. I didn't have any problem with it. It was easy for me to submit it because he was like, hey, Clay, make sure you have this lined up, X, Y, Z. Go talk to people. Don't, you're going to read something in a book. You're going to see something in a magazine. It's BS. Go talk to somebody that's actually doing it. My dad has been to numerous conferences and workshops before we even started this that we paid for, so that he would learn from somebody who runs a distillery, runs a bar, runs a distribution center. So doing your due diligence, and add in some padding for extra cost. If you're going to do a distillery, trust me, add in some extra cost because it's going to hit you. When it comes to family, families are always mean to each other. You got to be prepared for that. But when you lay out very strict guidelines, like my dad and my wife and my sister, I did for everybody, I'll stay in my lane, you stay in yours. But I think I go back to that blunt force trauma. Nothing's going to get better over time. If there's an issue, address it immediately. Yell at each other when you need to and get it out of your system. Don't hold on to it. When we started doing this, I think, maybe my family would hold on to stuff a little bit because they didn't want to come talk to me for whatever reason. And that just builds, and that's never the right approach. Assuming is always wrong. Just go talk to somebody face to face and say, hey, I think you screwed this up. Oh, well, hell, I did. Let's do it a different way. Or no, this is why I did it. Oh, okay. I didn't communicate it effectively. But, I think working with family is always a struggle for lots of different people. But I love my family to the ends of the earth. And so I'll scream at them. They'll scream at me. And I don't take it home. It is what it is. I mean, that's the thing that my wife and I have learned. My wife will hit me with something, and if it's just a complaint, I'm not listening to it. If it's a problem I can solve, I'll listen to it. But if you're going to complain just to complain to me, I'm the wrong guy, because I'm not, oh, I want to complain. I don't listen to it. You give me a problem and I'll solve it. But just to complain and nag, we don't do that in my house. It's just bad. It gives that a bad vibe. So.
I love it. I love it. What would you like listeners to know about your career leading up to the government contract and distillery? Because you have an incredibly impressive background, and you've also had a pretty wide berth of things that you've tried. So how would you explain kind of the road from the military to this point?
Yeah. So my first job when I was medically retired, I worked at an organization in Northern Virginia. I was a government contractor, a top secret facility. And I absolutely hated it because I was in a top secret facility, and it just, with my personality, I'm a people person. I am not a badge 3 times to go sit in a cubicle type guy. Some people really enjoy that type of work. I couldn't do it for that long. I only did it for a year. But I was lucky enough to work for a budget chief as I waited for my clearance to go through. I had a higher level clearance, and I learned a lot from him. He was a Navy P-3 pilot, which is a reconnaissance aircraft, Vietnam era, and he was mean to everybody, but he was fair. He was so fair. And if you knew your stuff, he left you alone. And if you didn't know your stuff, he'd hammer you. And I learned budgets from him. I learned money from him. And I kind of tell people now, as a government contractor, I support a lot of different organizations in the military, DOD primarily. And I'm everything that I used to hate, because people were always talking about money and money. Well, now that I know that my profit and loss statement, my income statement, is the heartbeat of my business, you're paying salaries. If you don't have money, you can't afford to pay for things. And let me go back to the distillery. When I started this with my dad was talking about a hobby. And I said, Dad, if this is a hobby, I won't go into business with you. And I wasn't trying to be rude, but you have to make money in a business. If your business is hemorrhaging money, you can't continue the business. Your hobby doesn't exist anymore. You have to make money, cash flow, cash in, cash out. That's how it works. And I learned that over time. I worked on Capitol Hill advocating for veterans and their family members with the Military Officers Association. And I enjoyed that job, but I always knew I wanted to create a business enterprise. I wanted to create a business. And that's what really motivates me. And I know I just talked about money, but it's not the money that motivates me. You have to manage the people, but it's about the competition. I mean, every day I tell people ask me, how do you define success? For me, I don't wake up to an alarm clock, and I have not woken up to an alarm clock in probably 10 years, because I am excited to get up every day, and I want to crush the competition. It's all I want to do. It's all I think about. I dream about it. And it is whatever aspect. I want my distillery and our products to be in more places at a more competitive price, and I'm pushing more products. In government contracting, I want our people to have better benefits and provide a better service globally than anybody else's team could be. That's just how I approach, everything. So, in between it, you mentioned I ran for Congress, but when it comes to business, it's just about the competition, and that really motivates me. I'm able to take care of my people and my team, and I guess I feed off of that. Just that, building a team, building a competitive environment, and then kicking somebody's butt just makes me happy. I guess I don't get to do it in the combat anymore, so I do it in the business world.
What was it like? I mean, you achieved something that very few people do. Like, you sold a company. What was that journey like, getting to that point?
My wife and I were running that primarily by ourselves. I had 2 little girls at the time, and I was able to sell it because we were able to grow it, first of all, and we were still very small, but we had about 55 employees. We had a very good margin because we managed our overhead and G&A and all that stuff. Um, but the company that acquired us was actually the third attempt to acquire our business. And excuse me, the biggest piece was I was able to take care of my daughters. I sold it and I was 30, I guess I was 33 years old at the time. And not only is there an arrogance piece to say, hey, I sold the company, but really it was more about taking care of my kids and take care of my family. I got recruited to play football at some small schools when I was graduating high school. And one of them, I think, was Princeton or Yale. And I didn't qualify for any grant or any whatever it is that it takes. And they don't give full ride scholarships. So I just remember my dad, who worked hard his whole life. And, he just had, like, I don't want to say it was regret, but he kind of felt like he let me down because I got recruited to play ball and I could have gone, but we didn't have $75,000 a year to send me to the damn school. So I was like, hey, no worries. I mean, I'm going to go to West Point anyway, so no big deal. And I'll walk on the football team there. I'll do that. So, but that was the thing for me. I just remember that in my dad's face of, like, I didn't want to do that to my kids, and my girls, they can go wherever they want. Whatever their path is, I just want to be there. And, but it also opened up another opportunity to have infrastructure where I could grow another business. And that was what my wife and I were going to grow into. So either take an acquisition to a company that's already been through the pain points, or try to grow yourself and make every mistake under the sun. So we chose I guess the easier path, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot in the 3 years I was with that company. So.
And then now you've started another company that's doing similar work.
Yeah, well, I plan to. Mm-hmm. I work for currently another firm that's doing a lot of ground and aviation support to DoD. And then, but I plan to start one again. I helped this company through a merger, and I did my job, and my time's kind of up. So I'm heading on to another thing, but it is what it is.
What advice do you have? I know a lot of our audience is aspiring entrepreneurs, and I love how you're speaking to this point of competition, of like using that as motivation to grow the business. What other advice do you have for listeners who want to start a company, whether that's in government contracting or something else?
Oh, wow. So when I talk to entrepreneur groups, things like that, I always tell people that you can't always tell who's going to be a successful entrepreneur. Sometimes you get an idea and you run with it, but I can always tell who's going to fail as an entrepreneur. I have this litmus test, but if I'm in a group and there's an individual who starts talking about all the things they're going to buy with all the money that they're going to make, I won't talk to them anymore, because you're a failure. Because your competition is going to kick your ass, because they're focused on beating you. If you're focused on a private jet and your Ferrari, great, get out of my sight, because you'll never have it, because you're going to fail. And it's okay to buy those things. I'm not like bashing people that buy them. What I'm saying is that if you take your eye off of that competition and providing a service or a product that's better than your competition every friggin' day, and you're not motivated to beat the competition, your competition is thinking about beating you every single day. And, I learned a lot in the military of how to treat people, respect people, and lead people and things like that. But I also learned that the enemy is trying to take me out every single day. I trained every single day, never took a break. I mean, I'd have a beer and take a break, but I'm focused on winning, because that's the American way. And I think that, if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea, get yourself mentors, get yourself people who have made mistakes, so you don't make the same mistakes. There's a lot of people that are my mentors that have built successful companies, and I listen. First of all, I shut my mouth, which is hard to believe, but I listen and I go, hey, this is my idea. And they go, well, that's dumb, don't do that. But, oh, okay, do this. And I'm actually listening to them. And, people will give their time, because there are other, like me, I want to leave a legacy where the world's better off than when I left. And I hope people say, Clay might have been, an arrogant whatever, but I asked him a thing one time and he sure did come and help me out. And there's a lot of people like that want to help other aspiring entrepreneurs. and it's not just about all the money you're going to make. It's about how do you impact the world? How do you beat the competition? How do you affect your community in a positive way? And if you keep those foundation and those principles, I think you'll be successful. And the last thing I'll say to that is what goes around comes around. So and I firmly believe this, what goes around comes around. If you treat others disrespectfully, cut corners, things like that, you'll probably make a short dollar, probably. But it'll come back around in some way, shape, or form. And I guess I believe in karma. I don't know.
Do you have any resources you would recommend? Is there any like books or conferences or programs that helped you in your career? And I'll take notes for listeners.
No, I guess, the big one I guess I read a long time ago was, what's good to great was I think everybody's read that one. But then I really started to dive in the specifics of what my career was, government contracting 101. Government contracting is such a peculiar industry anyways, because of the way that contracts and money flows in Congress and just the way that it operates. It's just very peculiar. When it came to the distillery, I mean, I probably have 50 books on business plans, and it would take me forever to try to remember them. But I was trying to absorb everything. My wife makes fun of me because our Amazon Prime, I probably buy 5 to 10 books at a time, and I read them at the same time. And she thinks that's weird, but I get bored with one book, so I'll read a chapter of different books at a time. But I guess it's just the way I process information. But, when it comes to leadership, wow, that's, Good to Great just had a lot of simple concepts that I think it's Jim Collins, right? It's taking Jim Collins and then going from there. One thing I just did recently, taking a personality test. I know it sounds silly. My friend's doing his doctorate and he asked me to do it, but it's good to brush up on those over time. And I didn't need the test last week to tell me that I was a cocky, arrogant, whatever. I got it. My wife tells me every day. But I wanted to know how people perceive me and the best way for me to communicate. I intentionally sit when I sit at a conference table, lots of times I'll lean forward. So I'm about 6 feet tall and I weigh about 240. I sit kind of slunched to be smaller, or I'll sit lower. And I really try not to bulldoze people in conversations, because if I have an idea, I mean, when I was younger, I would bulldoze an entire room of people because I'm right. And that's not the way that you lead an organization with people. You're paying them good money and you want to hear their feedback. You want people that are okay with giving you blunt force trauma feedback of, Clay, that's a stupid idea. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but for me, it started with good to great, and then understanding the specific career path I wanted to go down. Right now, I'm reading one of them is the Leader's Brain by two Germans, I believe. And I can send it to you later, but it's about, it's about neuroscience in your brain and how you process information and how you calm yourself down and how you get others to react to you. The thing I think I'll say this real quick about education is I did my master's, but then I went to Vanderbilt to do finance, negotiation, marketing. I didn't get an MBA. My master's is in policy, but I did it because I didn't want to let my team down. I was worried that somewhere I was missing something. So I went back to school while I was running my own company. In between, I went to Babson College near Boston for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. And that program, I didn't really get anything out of, but I wanted to listen to the other people in the room. When I was at Vandy, Nissan has a huge facility there, Nashville Predators there. I wanted to listen. I don't really care about the professor. I got it. I'm going to learn from you. But it was about the other people in the room. Justin, the way that you process information is different than me. And I learned so much more from my peers and other people I work with. I'm an American through and through. I'm going to steal everything you're doing and how you process. And I'm going to go, you know what? He's doing it that way. Maybe I need to start doing it that way, because, there's a lot of things you're better at than I am. So, I'm actually listening, and I have just engrossed myself in, those different forums where you can just listen and learn from other people. Um, I guess they have CEO groups, they have entrepreneur groups, and um, we always ran a little entrepreneur dinner roundtable here in Huntsville, and it was a group of guys like under 35, and we would just go eat steak, drink scotch, and smoke cigars, and pretend we were older. But I shared my business plan for the distillery with them. So what do you guys think? Another guy shared his business plan. One guy was a banker, one guy was a lawyer, one guy's real estate, one guy's me. It was just freely sharing information. And, for me, that's where I've learned the most from, not really books. It's about what other people are doing and try to, take some of that knowledge from others. So
I love the example of just this insatiable hunger for knowledge and the humility that takes too, to like realize you can learn from other people and you can always be learning something new. And I love this thought of you going and taking these courses while you're running your company and sharing your business plan. I think it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to kind of share these works in progress. And you're a great example of, like, it's not just like you went to school and that was it. Like, you're always learning and reading and getting information and mentors. And I think that's really awesome.
Well, the one thing I will say on sharing information is a distillery is something I knew others couldn't do. There was a group I was a part of, and I caused a big rub with some people because there were some young guys in Huntsville, because we've got a lot of really smart software engineers, and they were freely sharing information. And I said, guys, get a non-disclosure with this group. And the guy that was running the group, who ended up going to prison for something else, I won't get into that, which I won't say validated my thoughts, but I said, look, you guys need to protect yourself. You have this great idea. And I gave them a non-disclosure. I said, if you show this to somebody, make them sign this. And they're like, oh, Clay, you're being over dramatic. And I'm like, no, if somebody's a software engineer and they can also recreate your idea, they're going to steal it. And guess what? It happened. And there was a whole problem. And I didn't want to go, I told you so, but I'm going, guys, I'll share a financial model with you, but I'm not going to show you the algorithm that I wrote. Like, I have a concept that might do this. What do you think? But if it's really peculiar, I'm going to get you to sign a non-disclosure, and I'm going to keep a copy in a safe somewhere, because, you do have to protect yourself. And, even with me, people share ideas with me and I go, do you want me to sign a non-disclosure? No. Okay, well, I'm going to sign one anyways, because, I want you to feel protected in that. I mean, you do have to protect yourself. So, I just share that as well.
Mm. Well, I know we're towards the end of our time, and I always like to. There's so much we could have talked about. You've just got expertise in so many different areas. I'm sure there's things we didn't talk about that you want listeners to know. So I like to make room at the end, a couple of minutes, for you to share anything we didn't cover that you want our audience of active duty and veterans and military families to know.
I guess the one thing, one of the questions we had on there, I did run for Congress I ran as a Republican against a Republican incumbent, who was probably one of the most hated men in Congress, and I'll freely say that. But I ran as a Republican. I had no political background, had no idea what I was doing, and it was me and like a team of like one guy. And then towards the end, we got some volunteers. But, I guess the only thing I could say about that is that I really just wanted to make a difference. My congressman votes against the defense budget, and my community runs on defense. He's a fear monger of, China's going to take over the world and all this bad stuff. And, I hate the media in all forms, and I hate both sides of politicians. I just tell you that, with the fear mongering, they drive me up the wall with that, because America is such a wonderful place, and the world is a beautiful place, and there is a lot of positivity in the world, but nobody focuses on that. We sell a woe is me entitlement, victimized story, and that's just not the case. I live in Alabama now, and I'm originally from Texas, and I have friends who are like, I'd never go to Alabama, and I'm going, what are you talking about? It's wonderful. I mean, everybody in my neighborhood isn't actually from Alabama. We're transplants here, and there's a lot of people like that. And, I wouldn't go to Chicago and just assume that I knew everything about Chicago. And I mean, I've been to New York a bunch. I don't know anything about New York. I've just been there. And everywhere I go, there's just amazing people. And I've been around the world about 8 times. And everywhere I've gone, so many people are just kind of like the same. They want to eat a good meal, have a good drink, and take care of their family. there's that 1%. There's that 1% that want to cause fear and murder and do all this terrible stuff. And that's just what I took into my run for Congress, I guess. And that's the only thing we didn't really get to talk about. And, I hope that we can get past a lot of the negativity. I don't know if we ever will, but I'll just keep fighting the good fight. And I hope that others do. And, the way that I can make an impact, and I know others can make an impact, is running businesses and being good members of the community. That's just, like I said, what goes around comes around. And if you're positive, others will be positive. And if you're breeding negativity, I guarantee you negativity is going to come back to you. So that's the only thing I guess I can leave your listeners with.
Well, Clay, I just appreciate and respect your openness. And, and when I hear your story, I hear we've used resilience too much, but I hear that resilience, but I hear the proactive nature of you're getting after it and you're doing things that are, but by being competitive, you are serving your family, you're serving your community, you're serving your employees, you're serving your customers. Like, you are giving back so much in a way that's really aligned with who you are. And I think that's one, great for the world, but I think it's great for listeners to hear that, to hear the power of what you're saying. So I appreciate that. And one last thing I want to ask is, with Black Patch Distillery, how can listeners support you, whether that's buying products or in other ways? What can listeners do to support your mission there?
Yeah, I think that the easiest thing is to go to blackpatchdistilling.com. You'll see where our products are. Facebook is the easiest way to get a hold of us. It's just the way the world is. But I would say if you're interested, go to your local shop or your local distributor, depending on what city you live in, and they can order directly from us. We ship to, I think, 47 states right now. So it just depends. If they put in an order, we're in New York, Virginia, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, California, Mississippi, several other places. But like I said, we've only been able to sell for a while, and people just don't know about us. And that's the thing that we're fighting. We're trying to build a long-term brand. This isn't if you want to make money quickly, don't start a distillery. But we, that's the thing they can do, is just go to your local store and say, hey, have you heard of Black Patch? Can you contact them and order a case? And we'll get them the product. And if they like it, maybe we can sell it, send them some more. But that's really the best way that we can get on shelves, is by people going out there and requesting it. So I appreciate it if they would.
Awesome. And for listeners, in the show notes at beyondtheuniform.org, we'll have links to blackpatchdistilling.com where you can buy those products and support them. But Clay, thanks so much for your time and perspective today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Surface.
Beyond the Uniform is written and produced by me, Justin Nassiri, with help from our Chief of Staff, Steve Bain, and our editor, Kathleen Dillon. We are an all-volunteer organization and would greatly appreciate your help in any of the following ways. First, spread the word. Beyond the Uniform has over 330 podcast episodes and 15 on-demand webinars, all offered for free. Help us spread the word on social media, at military bases, or whatever gets this resource in front of more men and women who need it. Positive reviews on iTunes go a long way towards this as well. Second, sponsorship. Beyond the Uniform relies on sponsorship to keep us going. There is so much more we'd like to do, but we don't have nearly the resources to do so. If you know of a company that would like to advertise in any way with Beyond the Uniform, please send them to beyondtheuniform.org. Third, donations. If you're in a financial position to donate, you can find more information on the support section of beyondtheuniform.org. At our website, beyondtheuniform.org, you'll also find 330 plus episodes categorized by industry, functional role, and more. You'll find a link for live events, typically 4 per month. You'll also find both free and for purchase books that take a deeper dive on topics related to career growth. Thank you for your support as we aim to help members of the military and their families thrive in their post-military career and life.